At exactly 10:15 on a bright Monday morning, the doors of the executive boardroom opened, and a single father walked out carrying everything he owned at the company in one cardboard box. His footsteps echoed through the glass hallway as dozens of employees watched in stunned silence. Nobody tried to stop him. Nobody dared to speak. But what nobody knew was that the man walking away had just made a decision that would change the future of the entire company. His name was Elias Mercer, a 38-year-old single father who had spent 6 years quietly holding together the operations of one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the city. He had never been the loudest person in the room, never demanded attention, and never asked for special treatment. But on that morning, when the CEO gave him one final choice, obey without question or leave, Elias chose the door. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness, dignity, and second chances can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to Little Kindness Tales. Your support helps us bring more stories about courage, kindness, and the power of doing the right thing. The story had actually begun several weeks earlier, when Elias's life seemed ordinary from the outside. Every weekday morning, he woke before sunrise, prepared breakfast for his 9-year-old daughter, Nora, packed her school lunch, and made sure she had everything she needed before heading to work. Their small apartment was modest, but it was filled with photographs, drawings, and little reminders of the life they had built together. Nora had a habit of leaving handwritten notes beside her father's coffee cup. Sometimes they said something simple like, "Have a good day, Dad," and sometimes they contained drawings of their future dream house. Elias kept every note in a wooden box beside his bed. He had become a single father after a difficult chapter in his life, and raising Nora had taught him something his career never could: being responsible for someone else meant learning to keep going even when you were exhausted. If someone made a mistake, Elias helped them fix it instead of humiliating them. The company was called Meridian Access Technologies, a modern firm with tall glass walls, open offices, and a reputation for innovation. Its CEO was Vivian Calder, a 44-year-old executive known for her sharp decisions and demanding standards. Vivian had taken control of the company after her father retired and had transformed it from a struggling business into a major competitor in the technology industry. She was intelligent, disciplined, and intensely focused on results. But over the past year, the pressure of leading the company had made her increasingly impatient. Elias first noticed the change when a new project was introduced. Meridian Access was preparing to launch a major logistics platform that would determine whether the company could secure several important contracts. Elias discovered that a proposed software system contained a serious operational weakness. If the company launched it as planned, customers could experience delays and financial losses. Elias carefully documented the problem and submitted a report to the executive team. Instead of receiving praise, he was called into Vivian's office. The next morning, the issue was discussed during a board meeting. Several executives argued that delaying the launch would cost the company millions. Elias calmly explained that moving forward without correcting the problem could cost even more. He presented data, timelines, and alternative solutions. He wasn't trying to challenge Vivian. He was trying to protect the company. Vivian listened with a serious expression, but by the end of the meeting, she appeared frustrated. She told Elias that decisions came from the top and that his responsibility was to execute them, not question them. Elias left the room quietly. But he could not ignore what he knew. For the next several days, he worked late reviewing the system. He discovered that the problem was even larger than he originally thought. He also discovered that one of the outside contractors had provided inaccurate information to the company. Elias gathered the evidence and prepared another report. When he presented it, the atmosphere changed. Several board members realized he was right. The launch was temporarily delayed. At first, the decision seemed like a victory. But behind the scenes, tensions grew. Vivian felt that Elias had undermined her authority, while Elias believed he had simply done what any responsible employee should do. Then came the morning everything changed. It was a clear, bright weekday with sunlight pouring through the enormous windows of the boardroom. The city outside was busy and alive, but inside the room, the atmosphere was cold. Elias looked around the table. He saw executives avoiding eye contact. He thought about his mortgage, Nora's school, the bills waiting at home, and the uncertainty that came with walking away from a stable job. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then he quietly thanked everyone for their time. He returned to his desk. Nobody expected what happened next. Elias opened the small drawer where he kept his personal belongings. He placed Nora's latest drawing inside his bag. He collected the photograph of the two of them standing beside a lake. He took the small wooden keychain Nora had made for him at school. Then he gathered the few notebooks he had accumulated over 6 years. Finally, he placed his office badge on top of everything. When Elias walked back toward the boardroom carrying the cardboard box, employees slowly stopped working. They watched him pass. Some looked shocked. Others looked angry on his behalf. He reached the boardroom doors and stepped inside. The entire room became silent. Elias placed the box beside the door. Then he put a folder on the table. Inside were detailed solutions to the company's operational problem, a corrected launch schedule, and a complete transition plan that would allow another employee to continue the work without disruption. He had not sabotaged anything. He had protected the company even while leaving it. Vivian stared at the folder. For the first time that morning, her expression changed. She opened the documents and began reading. The board members followed. One of them quickly realized something important. Elias had identified not only the contractor's mistake but also a second vulnerability that could have affected thousands of customers. The room remained silent. Vivian looked toward the door where Elias was standing. But Elias had already turned away. He walked through the hallway and entered the elevator. The doors closed. And for the first time in 6 years, Meridian Access Technologies continued its day without him. Elias returned home that afternoon earlier than expected. Nora was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework when she noticed the cardboard box in her father's hands. She immediately knew something was wrong. Elias sat beside her and explained that he had left his job. Nora looked worried, but instead of asking whether they would be okay, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small piece of paper. It was another drawing. This one showed a man standing beside a little girl under a large blue sky. Underneath it, Nora had written that her father was her hero because he always tried to do the right thing. Elias looked at the drawing for a long time. Then he smiled. He realized something important. Losing a job was frightening. But losing his principles would have been far worse. The next morning, Elias woke early again. He prepared breakfast for Nora. He packed her lunch. He walked her to school. And then he came home and began searching for work. He sent applications to several companies, but the process was slow. Days became weeks. There were interviews that went nowhere and emails that never received replies. Elias began worrying about the future, but he refused to let Nora see him lose hope. Meanwhile, inside Meridian Access Technologies, the situation was becoming increasingly serious. The company discovered that Elias's warnings had been completely accurate. The contractor's software had additional weaknesses. Several executives had missed them. Vivian ordered an internal review. The findings were uncomfortable. Elias had not been disobedient. He had been responsible. The board eventually learned that Elias had warned management multiple times and had even prepared solutions before leaving. One afternoon, Vivian sat alone in the same boardroom where she had ordered him to leave. The sunlight was still streaming through the windows. She opened the folder Elias had left behind. At the bottom of the final page was a handwritten note explaining exactly how the company could prevent the problem from happening again. There was no insult. No bitterness. No attempt to punish anyone. Just responsibility. Vivian finally understood what she had failed to see. She had been so focused on protecting her authority that she had forgotten the difference between obedience and loyalty. A loyal employee does not always say yes. Sometimes a loyal employee has the courage to say, "This could hurt everyone." The following morning, Vivian made an unexpected decision. She asked the board to approve a new position focused on operational integrity and employee accountability. Then she drove across the city. Vivian offered him his position back, but with something different this time: authority to raise concerns without fear of punishment. Elias did not immediately answer. He thought about Nora. He thought about the years he had spent building his career. And he thought about the company employees who had silently watched him walk away. He finally accepted, but not simply because of the job. He accepted because he believed people deserved a workplace where honesty was not treated as rebellion. When Elias returned to Meridian Axis, something had changed. Employees greeted him with smiles. The board welcomed him back. And Vivian publicly acknowledged that her decision had been wrong. But the biggest change happened quietly. Elias's desk was no longer just a place where he completed tasks. It became a place where young employees came to ask questions, share ideas, and learn that doing the right thing mattered even when nobody was watching. Months later, Meridian Axis successfully launched its improved platform. The company avoided the crisis Elias had warned about. Its reputation grew. And Elias received recognition for his work. But when asked what he was most proud of, he never mentioned the award. He talked about Nora. He said that every difficult decision became easier when he remembered that his daughter was watching the kind of man he was becoming. One bright afternoon, Elias picked Nora up from school. She ran toward him carrying another drawing. This time, it showed a large office building with many people standing outside. In the center was a father holding his daughter's hand. Above them was a bright blue sky. Elias smiled as he looked at it. Nora asked whether he liked it. He told her it was perfect. And perhaps it was. Because the story was never really about a CEO, a boardroom, or a man packing his desk. It was about dignity. It was about courage. It was about understanding that sometimes walking away from something is not giving up. Sometimes it is the first step toward making things better. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that integrity still matters, and subscribe to Little Kindness Tales for more emotional stories about kindness, courage, and second chances. And before the story ends, here's a special request. Comment, "Integrity matters," below if you believe doing the right thing is more important than simply being accepted. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the strongest courage. And sometimes, when one person finally stands up for what is right, an entire room becomes silent, not because they have nothing to say, but because they finally understand the truth.